Welcome to the MotUS Edge, where we celebrate business, primarily youth sports facility management, leadership, and motivation. Co-hosted by Stacey Rowe, Cole Stott, Kevin Brubaker, and Casey Jones. We are here to fill your cup with knowledge, laughter, affirmations, and comfort knowing that you're not alone. You can and will succeed with the MotUS Edge.
Hello and welcome to the MotUS Edge. I'm here today with the usual crew and the ever so fabulous Lance Wagers, the infamous Lance Wagers. Yeah, so Kevin and you and Lance go way back, huh? I feel like.
We do, yes. So I first competed at NCA with Charlotte All-Stars in 1994.
Wait, so you were competing?
No, goodness gracious, no. I was coaching.
I'd love to see that.
I actually did compete at NCA in college nationals in the same arena in Dallas when I was, that was in 1990, actually. And that was at Christmas time. And so we did college nationals. And then after that, they did, I think it was college and then it was high school, middle school, college, and then that was it. There was no All-Stars back then. So it was just all that. So because I was at UNC Charlotte, I remember we lost to Louisville, shocker. That was in Christmas of 1990. And I didn't meet Carol and Lance then, but I knew they were the head honchos. And when I came back with Charlotte All-Star teams, that was Christmas of 94. And I got to meet, I remember talking to Carol on the phone for the first time, and I was in the middle of the gym. And Julie and some coaches I'm like in the middle of practice and I'm stopping. I'm having everyone quiet in the gym. And they're like, who are you talking to? I'm like, it's Carol Wagers on the other line. I was so starstruck. And then, and I knew who Lance was. And I remember thinking Lance was pretty much the most handsome man I've ever met in my whole life. And so that was when I was really young. I still think he's a really handsome man for that matter. So, but I met Lance at registration at NCA. He wasn't doing registration, but actually be popping by. And so I remember that. I don't think he probably does, but I remember that was Christmas of 94. And I met Carol and Lance for the first time competing in NCA. And then, we stayed friends in and out, conversations, just because we were like one of the oldest all-star programs in the country. And they loved that we came to NCA from North Carolina. And we had a lot of other gyms that came as well from the Carolinas, and just started a friendship. And when the USASF started in 2003 or 4, I was instrumental in that and being in the rules committee and sanction committee and all those different things. And so Lance, I don't even know how long he did stuff with USASF. It still does to this day. He handed out our trophy at Worlds this year at the USASF World Championships in Orlando. So I know he still does stuff with them, but probably the friendship really grew when Jen and I started judging for Fellowship of Christian Cheerleaders for Carrie Coleman. We've done that event for 18 years in a row. It's always at New Year's or right after that in Orlando. And Carol and Lance have judged that event. I think Lance has done it now for, 30 years. He would maybe know better than what I would. So he's done it 10 plus years longer than I have, but it's a small group of us. There's, 8, 10 of us that have judged that event every year for years. And the friendships that have grown from that has been amazing. And so we were heartbroken at Carol's passing a year and a half ago. But we're thankful. Lance came to Jen's 50th birthday party this past summer. We are all partying up in Charleston and did a boat dinner cruise, and just several of our friends from FCC came. That was just this past summer. And we're still together every January. So
Lance, in your memory, you met Kevin like 5 years ago, right? It's probably about when you remember meeting Kevin.
A few more than that. No, I mean, we go a long way back, and I can't say that I actually remember the first time I ever met him at our competition, but I totally remember him every year at FCC when we judge, because it's always kind of a bit of a reunion for us, and it's like an old party time for us, and we go there and play cards and just have a great time together. And we've been there, I have been there. I think this was my either 29th or 30th year of judging there. So
wow.
I used to be there. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I didn't know you were a card shark. What's your favorite card game that you guys play?
I'm not
Golf.
a card shark by any means, but my favorite one right now is golf. It's a new one that we just learned, and I taught them this year at FCC in Florida. So that was fun.
I mean, it's always, we do judge, by the way.
Yeah.
So we are judging a bit, but we stay up very late and might have a beverage or two and always watching whatever football is on, college or pro. And we, usually go to Lance's suite and play cards till very late. And there's usually 6, 8, 10 of us playing cards and lots of laughter.
That's
and
fun.
lots of tomfoolery. So, but we've done that for years. And so it's been pretty awesome. So
I'm curious. So you mentioned that I think you said 1994 when you took your team to NCA, your all-star team, Kevin.
Yeah.
So this year, with NCA being the last year at the convention center there, the last year in the arena and there's 1,500 teams, I believe. They have even expanded. There's even an arena over in the Omni. So how many teams were there in 1994?
I feel like there was 300 or 400 because at the time it was college and schools and the few all-star teams that were there. So I want to say, I don't know if it was 400, but it was probably 300 or 400.
Lance, do you remember the very first event? And what year was that?
Yes, the very first event happened in 1985, actually. That was the first All-Star that we ever did. That was the first All-Star Nationals that was ever done. And Carol and I actually coined the word All-Star in 1984 because we were worried about our high school nationals because there's a number of teams that were coming that were truly not high school teams. It was like Gulf Breeze, and there's a group from Georgia. There was just a collection of different girls, but they had permission from their state to go compete. And so a couple of those years, those teams were getting a little higher in the rankings. And one year, one of them placed third. And so Carol and I put our heads together and just said, we need to have a little conference. And so a bunch of us from the NCAA staff went into the conference room, and about a half hour later, we came out and we said, okay, we're going to call them All-Star. And then the very next year is when we had our first All-Star event. It was not real huge, but it certainly has become huge now. So I guess
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's pretty. I was going to say that's pretty interesting. I deal with that on a much, much smaller level. We do a little local rec competition, but the folks get a little heated when they believe that someone has put together a team that are comprised of kids from all over the place. So I can imagine that these high school teams were kind of the same way. Hey,
right?
These kids are all coming from the same school, so.
We got a lot of feedback about that.
I bet you did.
But that's why we took action on it. And because when All-Star first started, it was really not the competitive nature that it is today. It was really begun because it was a training place for kids that couldn't make high school teams or junior high teams. As a matter of fact, I owned the Cheerobics Center for like 12 years, and that I got that name from Herky. I literally, I didn't pay him, but he said, I'm just going to charge you $10 and you can use that name. And so I used that for about 12 years. And that was really, we just recruited kids that could not make a regular school team and trained them so that they did. And we were very successful at that. I can't say that we were an all-star gym at the time, but we did have an all-star, the Cheerobics Chili Peppers. I remember that. They competed one time at NCA, and they did not do very well. Thank goodness.
Yeah,
I was going to say, if they did, that would have been your next issue, right? That you would have had to deal with.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, Lance, I know a little bit about
the event.
I know a lot about your story, but I don't know how much Cole and Casey or Stacy or our listeners know about. I mean, your start with NCA. I mean, Herky was one of your best friends, and you guys worked together for years. I mean, would you go back to the beginning? Even, I know you're an instructor, and how you met Carol, and how because there's a lot of things, and I know Stacy knows this because she interviewed you for the book. But tell us about your humble beginnings and your start and your relationship with Carol and Herky, because I think our viewers would want to hear that.
Well, I was actually a cheerleader for the University of Colorado for 4 years and went to a summer camp in Pueblo, Colorado. And the head instructor there was Bob Shields, who used to work in the NCAA office along with Carol at that time. And he gave me an application there. And it was, I mean, I was kind of a long-haired hippie kind of person because I was at the University of Colorado, but I was a real backyard tumbler, and that helped me, I guess, look good at the camp, because he waited for about an hour after camp and came over in the dorm when I was checking out and said he wanted to give me an application to work. So I applied, and at that time, this is kind of a side note, but I didn't have any photos of myself. So I was a model at the time. So I used my modeling things and sent them in as my application for staff. There weren't any jumps or tumbling or anything. It was just a calling card, So, but then Carol hired me, and then she was actually my first head instructor at the University of Nebraska, and so that was 1971, my first camp, and then
wow,
I worked 13 weeks with her that summer, and we became best friends for like 10 years. And I thought at one point I was falling in love with her. And it was about 5 years into it, and I kind of told her when we were in Gatlinburg one time, and she went, "No, you're just infatuated right now." And so we never pursued much about it. And then we felt, when I moved to Dallas in 1977 to start full time with Herky, we were together every single day for about 2 years, and then we finally decided that it was time to get married, and then we.
That's awesome, Casey. I feel like that reminds me a lot of Casey and his wife and their story, and how much they work together and are super close together. Super close all the time, and I think that's awesome and really sweet. And Casey, I know, pesters her with some really bad jokes all the time.
Well, I'm kind of known for my dad jokes, so I think it's about time for one of my dad jokes. Is that
Probably so.
All right, so
okay,
which is faster, hot or cold?
Hot.
oh boy, this is gonna be dumb. I can tell.
It's gonna be great.
I'll go with cold. I'll say hot. Lance, what do you say? Hot or cold?
faster.
Which is faster, hot or cold?
I don't really know.
You guys are correct. It is hot, and it's because you can't catch a cold. Sorry, you can catch a cold. You can catch a cold.
Okay.
Awesome. That's great.
All right, with that, I'm going to jump right into something serious here. So I feel like at MotUS, we hold the greatest business conference, business expo there is. We've done it 2 years, and man, year one was great, and year two was exceptional. So we've got big plans for making year three even better. So we'd love for you guys to join us for the MotUS Business Expo, September 28th through 30th in Nashville, Tennessee. 2 days of business development, leadership, and growth. The Business Expo is designed specifically with gym owners in mind. The MotUS Business Expo is free for members, so join the movement today at www.joinmotus.com. That is www.joinmotus.com. I almost messed it up again. I swear I'm spelling Mickey Mouse.
You like to stick that extra U in there.
Yeah. I'm singing Mickey Mouse or something. But
oh my goodness,
anyway,
too funny. So
joinmotus.com.
Yeah. Yes. So Lance, you moved to Texas, and then you and Carol set the world on fire, right? That's what happened.
Well, yes. I mean, I think that we had Herky's confidence in us. So we earned that over the years, because I remember going to him the first time in 1981. I just said, we really want to try a national competition. And he said, well, if you can show me that you can make money off of it, then we'll do it. And so we went to town, and we only had like 1,000 kids the first year in Dallas. And it was at the Dallas Convention Center. And we used one ballroom because that's all we could afford at the time. And after the event was over, I did all the figuring, went back up and showed him that I made a little over $1,000 clear. And that was including the sales of merchandise. So, but he said, okay, we're good to go. Let's start doing this. And then about 5 years later, Carol and I did the first All-Star also. So
which originally that was with high school, right? Like the first All-Star competition was at the high school competition. It was just kind of its own division, or 1985 was the first.
Well, we separated it into strictly just All-Star that year in 1985. And because then there were, and at that time, the level of competition was not very good because they were made up of a lot of kids that couldn't make a high school or junior high school team. And back then we probably only had 3 divisions. But it started growing, and then years later, it's just, well, look at it now. I mean, amazing, because I'm going to an event on this Friday at the convention center where they're having some kind of battle in the arena after the first day of judging, and then they're going to talk about, Carol and I starting the All-Star industry by naming it, because when it first came out, it was a hyphenated word, and now it's not. But I love the fact to see how far this has gone, and just the tremendous expertise. And I think a lot of times Herky just sat back and had confidence in us and allowed us to move forward. And he, I know Kevin knows this too, but Herky was one of the most generous people we've ever known. And he just literally gave us NCA and let us run it, and didn't have his thumb on us, and just appreciated our work, and it made it very well known so many times.
Well, you guys certainly laid a tremendous foundation for, an incredible competition. And basically, it became to be known as the competition. I tell this all the time, but before Worlds and before a lot of the end event things, our season was, the kids in their mind, it was made or broken at NCA. If they had a good NCA, they could lose every competition and win CA, and they'd tell you they had the best season ever, or they could win every competition and get second at NCA. And oh my goodness, it was just a bad season. So you guys laid the foundation and just
for sure
built something incredible. So
our divisions were so big back then. I mean, in the early days of high school competition, it was like you could have 150 in one division. And then if you made the top 10, that was really amazing. So,
it was youth, junior, senior, and they would reach 100 plus, And so that was after I actually won senior all-star, I think in 1994 at NCA, which is crazy. I think 90 teams in our division. It was crazy. And that was part of what helped us create Cheersport, was going to NCA. I mean, if you're not even in the top 50, you're like, why'd you pay the money to come? So that's what got our minds going on, novice, intermediate, excel, et cetera.
And then Kevin decided he was just going to create 1,000 divisions until he changed it to Cheersport. So Lance, way back in the years that I consider kind of the all-star boom, so like the 90s and early 2000s when all-star kind of exploded, there's a big difference in between UCA and the NCA, kind of the, 2 different styles that were out there. Was that intentional on y'all's end, or how did that happen? It just kind of organically came about like that?
I think both companies were very well aware that we had different styles. And in my opinion, I felt UCA's style was much slower and not as, they were great tumblers and all that, and I'm not putting them down by any means, because they've grown tremendously too. But I think our focus was to really entertain the crowd and to add more. We had a lot more dancers, even male and female, and that was highly criticized for a while. But I love the expertise that has come from this whole industry, because it's just really. It's grown leaps and bounds. And that's like when Stacy asked me the other day, she said, "What's your favorite part of cheer?" And I said, well, at this point, because I mainly just judge, and now I've graduated to handing out trophies. So I love all 3 of them together. I think I love to see all of those elements work together, because I think I have an eye for gymnastics, I don't think I would want to judge tumbling every time I turned around, though, because I think it's tremendously difficult to stay up with all the level appropriate things. And so that's why I love judging overall if I do. So,
Right.
But I think, there were different styles and stuff, but they've all melded together. And I love that the companies are now allowing everyone to compete everywhere. And I think that's real important.
Lance, you said you're like, well, now I've graduated to just passing out trophies, but I think it's important to note. I feel like if I remember correctly, because I was just working on your chapter of the book this week, you had done at the last Worlds 37 awards ceremonies.
Yes,
Which is a lot. I mean, that's hard work.
But and one of my best buds that was on NCAA staff with me too, Glenn Phibbs. He and I, we love that. This is about our 4th or 5th year to do it. And we know the system, and I know the majority of the coaches down there. So I like the fact that I can go up to them and congratulate them in person. And I love some of the examples that when someone gets second by a quarter of a point, but I love to see the custom that they have to go in and congratulate the first team winner and all that. Because I think a lot of people take examples from their coaches.
Yeah.
So,
Lance, I know we like when
I really enjoy that. I because of that, I mean, Glenn and I also went to Bournemouth this year in London and handed out trophies there and had our own awards venue there. So it was real fun. And they just thought we had the funniest accents.
I feel like Justin Carrier's kind of the new Lance Wagers. Do you remember when Justin had started and kind of became the face of NCAA?
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, he's the one that invited me to this thing on Friday night. So, they say it's going to be so crowded that I need to leave at 4:00 for a 6:00 meeting. So we'll see what's going to happen. Wow. But he's phenomenal, and he has really done a major job in the All-Star market, and he is the face of ACA All-Star for sure.
Yeah.
NCA. Sorry, I just went to my own company.
I was going to say, so you and Carol retired in 1995, I feel like, right? You thought you were going to retire, but then you changed your mind. So tell us about that.
Well, I really changed my mind because Carol and I went on a mission trip with our church to Brazil. And while we were there for 10 days, and we met a mother of these two really darling, cute girls. And she approached my wife at a church meeting we were having one night in a real rundown church. And she asked if Carol was married, and she said yes. And she pointed to me, and I noticed I was about a half a block away from them. And then when we were walking back to the boat, I said, Carol, what was that lady asking you about? And she said, well, she had to deal with an interpreter on it, but the lady, in essence, said, we wanted to know if you would want to adopt their two youngest daughters. And at that time, they were 10 and 11, 1 year and 1 day apart from each other. And Carol said, I said, well, what'd you say? And she said, well, no, we're retired. And I said, well, why wouldn't we? And she went, oh, I was afraid you were going to say that. So we started, it took 1.5 years to get the girls back over to the United States, and they spoke Portuguese, and we did. And so the very next day that we got them here from Brazil, we've had them in school. And at that point, I thought, I better think about another job because I've got college educations ahead of me now. And that's when Jeff and Greg Webb approached me about becoming the president of ACA, a different division for their company. And so I took that on, and I was there for 20 years and then really retired about 5 years ago.
So you worked 25 years for NCA and then 20 years for varsity, essentially.
Right.
ACA, but ACA was owned by varsity, right?
Right. It was really owned by someone else, and it was just a name that was sitting there for years. But Sini Royal also worked for ACA with me, because I called about 10 of my close friends and said, I want to do something really different if we're going to do it. And so we had a wonderful leadership program that is biblically based, and we really taught the kids about life skills and manners and I mean everything. We started the first year. We only started off with 1,000 kids at our summer camps, and then it finally grew to 4,000 or 5,000. But it was always a smaller market. And people looked at it as the Christian camp, but it was we never touted it as strictly Christian. But it was definitely biblically based on the leadership program.
That's awesome.
That's really awesome.
Great story. Good stuff.
So there's two girls now. What are they doing?
But now they're we adopted them and brought them here in 1997, which was the first year that I opened up ACA. And so I had to call Jeff and Greg and say, I'm going to be going to Brazil with Carol, and we may be there for a whole month, but I'll get my brochure done. I'll get all this other stuff done while I'm there. Excuse me. And it all just worked out. And so but now they are, because when we got them, they were 11 and 12. And I probably shouldn't say this on this podcast, so you can cut it if you don't like it. But I remember the first 2 weeks they were in America, they both started their period. And I went, oh, brother. And Carol goes, you need to go to the store. And I went, well, what do I buy? I mean, I had no idea what we were even talking about.
Lance, I got a couple girls. I feel your pain. Yeah, I've had to go to the store too.
They are now, they're 39 and 40 and just beautiful women. And I've got 4 grandchildren from them, and they keep me busy. So
the things that dads will do for their daughters, I've been married to my husband for 25 years, and he would never do that for me, but he did do it and has done it multiple times for our daughter. I'm just saying.
Good.
I have a couple girls. I can testify. So yes.
Oh yes.
I have no girls.
It's too funny. Well, Lance, Kevin and Casey and Colt and myself are all back in the event business, starting the Cheer Expo. So Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Cheer Expo?
Well, we started last year. We had 3 events, and this season we did 8 events. And so this year it's been amazing. Been to LA, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Charlotte, Atlanta, Nashville, Columbus, Ohio, and outside of Philadelphia. And so next year we're adding events for the Cheer Expo. We have different brands, but we'll also be in Dallas and Houston and Vegas and Myrtle Beach and New Orleans next year. Trying to find somewhere to go in the Northeast as well as Central Florida. So we're excited about doing 14 or 15 events next season. But our website is thecheerexpo.com. And so just as it sounds, TheCheerExpo.com. So love for you to check out our events or our webpage. And we'd love to have you come compete at the Cheer Expo or any of our events next season.
And Kevin can spell. Yes.
There we go.
Yeah, way better than Casey.
Hey, and Lance, if you want to come out of retirement one more time for number 3, I mean, we'd love to have you on board for a couple of these events.
Yeah. That's great. I really enjoyed being there. I love the scoring system and the way it's run and just the different focus. It's a different competition. I really enjoy it.
Kevin can definitely create about 37 award ceremonies for you to pass out trophies at the event. So
I think we're doing 10 award ceremonies in Nashville. It's I don't know about 37, but yeah. In the old Cheer Sport days, I think we got up to, I don't know how many award ceremonies, probably about 25, 30 award ceremonies just at Cheer Sport alone. So I don't know what they did this past year. I was there, but I didn't count them. So I don't.
Well, for our listeners out there that don't know, Lance is a special feature, I guess, in the Pioneers of All-Star book that I am working on. It will be available sometime in the fall of 2025. I was originally shooting for August 19th, but that is definitely not happening anymore. So we're just gonna say sometime in the fall of 2025. But if you want to learn more about Lance and Carol Wagers and their story and their incredible impact on our industry, you can check that out in the book, The Pioneers of All-Star. So Lance, I don't know if you're familiar with Simon Sinek, but I'm obsessed. And we do a quote of Simon's every single podcast episode. So today's quote is: the responsibility of leadership is to create more leaders. So what are your thoughts on that, Lance?
I totally agree. And I think that's what I can proudly say this, that I know Carol and I did that with NCA, because we've had such a following of ex-head instructors and people that have become so successful in the business world, not just because of our leadership, but because we allowed them to show their own leadership. And I think that's so important, because a company is only as strong as not the weakest link, but the weakest leader. And I think you need to really promote leadership. And I totally love that quote. I'm right on that one.
Awesome. I want to circle back for just a quick second too, before we wrap up, about the Cheerobics, because you mentioned that you got that, you paid Herky $10, whether he took the money or not is relevant, but we're going to say you paid Herky $10 to borrow that phrase. And it dawned on me before we're getting ready to wrap up that I'm like, I wonder how many people out there listening even remember what Cheerobics is, or I haven't been to NCA camp in forever. Maybe NCA is still doing Cheerobics. I don't even know, but Cheerobics was the workout, the warm up workout, right? You guys had like a legit, this is the NCA workout that you would do at camp.
It was really a warm up program, and the stretching program it was a daily thing at the camps. I really don't know if they call it Cheerobics still, because I don't know their exact program right now, but for years it was the warm-up program, and it was intense. I mean, we would make sure that coaches and everyone else did it together, and but it was a thing that we got together and made that up. And then because my gym was probably one of the first in the Dallas area. Matter of fact, Cheer Athletics even rented a Cheerobics to that little baby one of ours for a couple of their teams to come in and practice there before they had their first gyms and stuff. So, but Cheerobics, and that's why I went to Herky and just said, we're opening up a gym. And matter of fact, I ended up opening up 2 different ones. And I want to use the Cheerobics name. And he said, well, I think that's great. And at first it was just to really train cheerleaders to become high school or junior high school cheerleaders and better skills.
Lance, I wanted to tell a quick story. And I know you're a big golfer. When we first became part of varsity back in 2005, we came to the varsity golf tournament. And one of my good friends, Trey Letard, is not the best golfer in the world. He would probably admit that. He has gotten much better. But it just randomly, you guys were playing behind us, and I believe it was you, Herky, Peterson, and someone else. It may have been Peterson's dad.
And it was John, his father. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it just so happened during the course of the whole round, you guys would drive up right behind us, like right when Trey had to hit, because he's not a very long, hitter of the golf ball, and he was always looking for the ball, and he would just shank it. And I'd be like, Trey, don't worry, that's just Lance and Herky back there. He's like, oh, they're making me so nervous. Anyway, it was funny.
My golf game is not where it used to be. Because when I was 18, I almost turned pro, because I was the club champion and all that stuff all along. But but my game is not good right now. I think COVID really took a part of my game, because I didn't play for 14 months, and that you can't do that with golf. Yeah, so you got to practice. But I remember those good old days of varsity tournament. And one of them, Herky and I, when we teamed up, because I was on his team a lot of times, and we took second one year, and we were so proud of that, because Herky went, awesome. This really means a lot to me. And I was going, that's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for hopping on today. To our listeners out there, be sure to follow us on YouTube at the MotUS Edge podcast, or on Instagram and X at Join MotUS, and follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Give us a like or a shout out if you like what we're doing and you want to hear more. Let us know. Thank you so much for listening, and we're excited for you to have the MotUS Edge.
Thank you for listening to the MotUS Edge. We hope you had a blast. Join us next week for more on business, leadership, and motivation. Subscribe and follow the show where you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our newsletter at joinmotus.com. The MotUS Edge podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.